The flies lay the eggs inside the cheese, and when they hatch, the maggots eat through it, releasing an acid that breaks down the fats. As they squirm, the cheese softens, and when it's ready, it's served with the live maggots still inside. Now, the maggots will jump off if you don't hold your hand over the sandwich while eating it. But once you swallow them, they can survive in your intestines, eating you from the inside. Because of this, the cheese is actually illegal, but millions of dollars worth is still made and sold on the black market to this day. He throws his body backward when the ball is in the air and lifts his non-kicking leg first to gain height. At the peak of the motion, he snaps his kicking leg forward. He spreads his arms for balance, and his eyes stay locked on the ball until contact. And once he strikes, he lands on his arms and back to absorb the impact while the ball makes its way toward the goal. When you slice a watermelon in half and in half again, then cut it into wedges, the sticky juices cover your face as you eat. And since it doesn't fit your mouth, you actually lose some of the fruit. Instead, cut the watermelon in half on the short side and flip it over. Next, slice even strips in one direction, then again in the other direction, making a grid. When you pull out a piece, most of them will be the perfect size to fit in your mouth. If you happen to get kidney stones, you could ride a roller coaster and let the shakes dislodge them from the tissue walls. Then, as the coaster moves, the change in speed shakes your whole body, and this makes them move into your bladder, where they can finally pass through when you pee. Now, not every ride is able to do this, but Disney's Big Thunder Mountain does this so well that some people go there just to get rid of their kidney stones. It swam straight towards her with a steel hook glinting inside, and instead of turning away, she reached in with her hand inches from its teeth and plucked the hook free. Now, on her next dive, another shark appeared with a hook, and then another swam up to her, all with hooks buried in their mouths. Now, they would thrash and swim away as she worked to free it, but they would keep coming back until it was gone. And over the years, she has removed more than 300 hooks. He tossed the hard drive into the trash, thinking it was blank. But a few months later, he realized it was actually his key to 8,000 Bitcoin, which is worth over $800 million today. He begged the city council to let him dig up the landfill, but they refused, saying he could damage the surroundings. So he made a plan that used special drones and robot dogs, hiring a team of experts to carry it out. And he even tried to buy the whole landfill. But to this day, the hard drive is still buried somewhere under millions of pounds of trash. He climbs in through a zipper on the belly, slipping his feet into Snuffy's giant ones. With his hands, he controls the eyes and mouth while speaking in Snuffy's voice. And a bike handle attached to a PVC tube allows him to raise and lower the trunk. Behind him, a second puppeteer wears the back legs, and each movement is carefully rehearsed to ensure Snuffleupagus doesn't trip over himself. When an earthquake hits, the force travels into the steel and rubber tubes at the bottom of the building. These tubes absorb the shock of the earthquake and allow the building to sway gently while the ground shakes around it. Other options include packs of giant springs, or even metal plates that literally slide the skyscraper around. But without these, the force would travel up the building's frame, cracking the walls while bending the steel beams, and sending the skyscraper crumbling to the ground. When you vape, the battery inside can short circuit. This creates intense heat within seconds. The chemicals inside start to vaporize, building pressure fast. And with no room to escape, it keeps rising until the battery bursts, shooting hot metal and flames straight into your face. It can burn your lips, shatter teeth, and leave permanent scars. He slipped and fell into the rapids, and his leg got stuck between two jagged rocks. Rescuers fought to free him, but it was wedged in hard, and in the icy water, his body started to shut down. They tried to keep him warm while attempting to lever the rocks apart, but after 20 hours, they still couldn't get him free. Finally, they pulled out a saw and amputated his leg. He was airlifted to a hospital and eventually recovered, and now plans to finish the rafting trip with only one leg. If you're afraid of the dark, could you hop in a plane and chase the sunset, avoiding nighttime forever? Well, you would need a plane that could fly west faster than the Earth spins, and it would have to stay at supersonic speed for days without stopping, meaning you would need another plane to refuel yours mid-air. Oh, the aircraft would need to mostly run on autopilot so you could sleep and take breaks. But if you don't have a plane, you could just get a flight to the North Pole. You see, for 6 months, the sun doesn't set in Earth's poles. It just circles the horizon non-stop. And when it finally starts to get dark halfway through the year, just hop on a flight to the South Pole, where the sun is just rising for another 6 months. He hid the bomb inside a laptop and boarded the plane. You see, he planned to detonate the device once the plane reached 30,000 feet. The explosion would rip the cabin apart, killing everyone inside. He waited as the plane climbed higher and then went to set the bomb off. But they actually weren't high enough for the explosion to rip apart the plane like he planned. Instead, it just tore a hole near the emergency door and sucked him out into the sky. All of the passengers survived as the pilots turned back and landed safely. He was the only person that was killed. She slipped into the race just half a mile from the finish line, blending in with the real runners as the crowd cheered around her. Then she sprinted across the line, arms raised, claiming victory in front of cameras. But other runners were immediately suspicious, since no one remembered running next to her. So officials checked every checkpoint and found that she was never listed. So they stripped her of the title. If you put a plane into a catapult and launched it, you would only need to use the engine once it was in the air. And some people think this would save a ton of jet fuel. But for a commercial plane, the catapult would have to launch it at almost 200 miles per hour, causing the metal to rip right off. And even if you made it stronger, the force inside the cabin could seriously injure passengers. And you would need to use extra fuel just to power the catapult, meaning you wouldn't really be saving anything. He put 12 cameras side by side, each connected to wires lining the track. As the horse ran past, it snapped the wires one by one and triggered each camera in order. These captured tiny slices of movement, each at 1/1000th of a second. You see, he wanted to prove that horses lift up all 4 feet at once when they run, and when the images were played together, the horses appeared to fly, with all hooves lifted for one brief moment. Soon, others began to experiment with this technology, paving the way for modern movies. The hatch was closed after the baby was put into the stroller, and a glass window let the parents see inside. As they walked, they would use a small hand pump to pull air through a filter, and only clean air would reach the chamber. You see, during World War II, people were afraid that mustard gas would be dropped on cities, so they made the stroller to make sure the gas was filtered out, and their babies could breathe safely. They scraped through the wall, creating a tunnel, and they did this through the night to avoid the prison guards. At one point, one of them was caught, but he convinced them that he was just stealing food from the cellar. After months of tunneling, they finally surfaced 60 feet away, and over 100 men escaped through the narrow shaft. 2 drowned as they attempted to cross the river. Another 48 were recaptured, but 59 men made it across Union lines, finally reclaiming their freedom. Start with a triangle made of 4 pieces that fit together perfectly. But when you rearrange it, an empty spot suddenly appears. You see, when you first put it together, it looks like the pieces fit together with no extra space. But if you look closer, the smaller triangles inside have slightly different slopes, so they can't form a perfectly straight line. And this makes the longest side curve just a tiny bit. When rearranged, that tiny curve shifts, leaving tiny strips of empty space. And the area of these strips is exactly the size of the missing square, meaning it was never actually a triangle, just an optical illusion. He filmed himself rubbing meat on his butt and sticking cheese up his nose before putting them on sandwiches to serve at Domino's. They posted the videos online as a prank, but just hours later, the clips went viral, and it shocked everyone who saw it. Some viewers even tracked down the exact store location, and the 2 employees were quickly fired and arrested. Domino's even sent out a public apology, but the damage was done and their sales dropped by 50%. If you plugged the top of an erupting volcano, would it prevent it from exploding? Well, magma and gas would still be rising from deep inside the Earth, and with nowhere to escape, the pressure would build higher and higher until the rock around the magma chamber would start to crack, opening new eruption points miles away from the original volcano. But the pressure might cause it to explode sideways out of the volcano, causing the eruption to be even more destructive than normal. After she withdrew thousands of dollars from the bank, he followed her through the streets. And while she was walking, he grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Then he took what he thought was the cash and started to run away. But he realized he had taken the wrong bag, so he came back and slammed her even harder into the concrete. Her spine snapped, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. He took the money and ran, but was later caught and sentenced to 30 years in prison.